Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge we are on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation and thank them for the opportunity to live, learn, and work on their lands. BC Centre for Women in Trades and Vancouver Island University have partnered to promote the importance of strengthening the network of women in trades. We strongly believe that a stronger network will lead to an increase in retention and help advance women in the trades in BC. We believe that centralizing the existing resources and services for women in trades will enable women to confidently move through the different stages of their careers and remain successful. And we believe that a collective support between employers, educational institutions, and organizations would significantly impact a woman's ability to access that viable career within the trade. So tonight, we've invited 5 guest speakers. Some will be sharing their experiences within the trade, and others will be speaking about the benefits of hiring women to be part of their teams. So we encourage all participants to listen to the stories being presented, to share their thoughts, ask questions, and to connect with the other women in trades that are also participating. So again, welcome. And Lindsay, I'll hand it over to you to tell us a bit more about BCCWITT.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Marika. I really appreciate it. Well, I'm coming to you this evening from the land of the Lekwungen people down in Victoria, BC. The land of the Songhees people is exactly where I live. But I'm here tonight representing the BC Centre for Women in the Trades, and our offices are actually on the Lower Mainland, on the unceded territory of the Kwik-Wet'lem First Nation, within the shared traditional territory of the Kwetsi, Tsawwassen, and Stolo First Nations. I am an electrician. That is what I spent the last 10 years of my life doing. And one of the things that I experienced during my career as an electrician was a profound sense of isolation. And when that really started to get to me, I decided to do something about it. And so what I did was started a monthly meetup here in Victoria for women in trades. And it was for us, by us, get together once a month for burgers and just chat, find out what's going on in everyone's lives. And through that, well, frankly, I made some of the best friends that I've ever met in my entire life. And so that was a few years ago. And from that, I managed to then get connected with women all over the province. And a lot of that happened through social media, but it also happened through outreach from different individuals who made a difference in my life. And one of the other projects that I soon learned about was the BC Centre for Women in the Trades. And so I was lucky to come on board with the BC Centre just almost a year ago. And my position there is as outreach coordinator. The BC Centre for Women in the Trades is an organization that is working on both recruiting women into the trades, but also on the issue of retention for women in the trades. Because I'm not sure how you are aware, but the number of women in the construction and maintenance and industrial trades has not really shifted in decades, and it's about 4%. Which is pretty bonkers because we've actually increased the number of people women going into the trades, but you just see an incredible drop off of women who do not actually complete their red seals or whatever the ticket is for their particular part of the industry. And so the BC Centre for Women in the Trades was founded to address some of these issues and make sure that we are doing everything we can to support women in the trades, get more women into the trades, and make sure that they don't just stall out and decide to leave. So based on a lot of research that's been done, the center has 3 main pillars. The first is, and they're addressing the 3 main reasons why women don't go into the trades or why they don't stay. And the first one of those is toxic work culture. And so for that, the center works with the End Violence Association of British Columbia and the BC Lions to, they do a trades version of the Be More Than a Bystander program. So that's working directly with male allies and running them through this program of seeing how they can, well, just like the name says, be more than a bystander and be a true ally to women in the work environment, and actually not just women, beyond that as well, all sorts of equity-seeking groups who aren't typically being represented when we look at a trades environment. The second pillar is opportunities for advancement. That's something we hear all the time from women in the trades is, yes, okay, so I can get into the trades, I can get so far, but it's really hard to get into positions of power, to get into management, to get into sort of roles of responsibility. Anyway, and then the final piece that we work on here is peer mentorship and making those peer connections, because actually having a community of peers is one of the main reasons that we hear all the time from women why they're not happy in their trades career. And so that is a lot of the focus of the work that I do. We also have a careers program that's funded through funding through the ITA. And so we actually help women address all the barriers they're facing, whether they're starting their trades career, whether they're midway along and looking for extra training or some sort of direction of what to do next. We send volunteers to all sorts of events, go and speak to Girl Guides, go and speak to local schools. Sometimes the ITA apprenticeship advisors get in touch with us because they're actually working with a careers program at a school and putting on a career fair. And so we send tradeswomen to go and do that. And that's something that we can do through our network. We have regional Facebook groups. We have very, very active social media. We have an amazing staff person who takes care of that. So you can check out more about what we do at bccwitt.ca.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. So I will turn it over to Andrea Dirtle to talk to a little bit about her story.
Thank you, Marika, and thank you, Lindsay. So my name's Andrea Dirtle. As Marika introduced me, I'm a Red Seal plumber and a BCCWITT gas fitter, and I'm currently a pipe trades instructor at Camosun College, and I work closely there with the Women in Trades program as well, sometimes as a homeroom instructor for our sampler program. I'm also currently working on a curriculum development project with Western Diversification with a focus on retention of women in the trades to advance to their Red Seal. So I kind of wanted to talk this evening a little bit about my journey, kind of getting into the trade and some of the different things that I saw and challenges that I had to overcome. I got into the trade in 2007. This is actually technically my second trade. My first trade was the culinary arts. So I went through chef training program right out of high school. And by 2007, I just wasn't in love with doing that anymore. And I kind of started looking at what my options were. And I enrolled myself in the Foundations Pipe Trades program at Camosun College. Had no idea what to expect. It was kind of a whim for me, and I really just wanted to try something new. I went into the program in an intake of 12, and 11 of the 12 classmates that I had were men, and I was the only woman in the class, and I was 25, and it was definitely new territory for me. I was really fortunate to have had a really terrific instructors that encouraged me and pushed me along the way in our foundation program. Some of them are actually my colleagues now, which is really unusual. But I think that for me, I really felt challenged while I was at school. I really doubted that I could do it. And you know, I finished near the top of my class. I finished the program 2 months early, and I still fought this kind of feeling of self-doubt all the time when I was in school. Like, you know, what I was putting out there wasn't going to be good enough to get me a job when I got into the field, and was I actually going to be able to handle it when I got out there? And that was kind of exacerbated by when I left school and started hunting for work, and I returned to Nanaimo, where I'm originally from, and I handed out about 30 resumes, and places that were looking for people were like, no, we're not looking, we're not hiring right now. There was this whole real fight to get a job. And I had almost pretty much given up and figured I just wasted all my money going through this foundations program. And I walked into this one last place, and I talked to the woman at reception, and I handed over my resume, and I was feeling kind of demoralized at that point. And I was walking back to my car figuring I wasn't going to get an interview. And this young guy chased me out of the building, and he's like, hey, wait. Come back for an interview tomorrow. And so I came back for an interview, and I got hired on the spot. And I was honestly so very fortunate that I didn't give up, because this company was just tremendous. I spent 6 years of my apprenticeship with them. I had some of the greatest mentors. And I think that some of the biggest challenges I faced within that experience of working for that company is that they believed in me more than I believed in myself. I was a second-year apprentice and I was doing an entire house by myself. And I felt like I was totally out of my element. Like I'm doing all the roughing for all the drainage, and I was doing all the water lines, and I had a journeyman there who came and met me for inspection, and I just felt really out of my element. Like I was kind of drowning, but there was all the support from my coworkers, and I knew I could reach out to anyone there. And it was a really positive experience for me. And later on, working for that company, I found out that the boss kind of hired me because he wanted me to play for his women's rugby team. And I'm about 6 feet tall, and I've got a pretty decent build on me. So he had really hoped to recruit me, and I was a soccer player, so that was a big no. But it led to great experiences for me. The company actually took out a full-page ad in the newspapers across the Middle and North Island when I got my Red Seal, and had a writer write a story about me. And things were going super well for me there. I love that job. I wouldn't have left it for anything. And then that company went bankrupt because of some poor financial decisions. So I was stuck in this place with my family where I had to hunt for another job. And we decided that we wanted to make a shift in where we were living and move to Victoria because there were more opportunities there for my spouse. So I started again hunting for jobs in Victoria. And you'd think that as a journey person and someone who'd had an ad taken out in the newspaper about them, that it would have been easy for me to find work. Not a bloody chance. So I ended up emailing a resume off to a company in Victoria, and I got a call back, and I did this phone interview, and everything was going super well. The guy offered me the job on the phone. I was looking really forward to it. He's like, show up on Monday, you can start work right away. I've got a fully kitted out van for you. Everything's good to go. I show up to the office on Monday, and I guess the owner of the company hadn't realized he'd hired a woman over the phone because I don't have the most high-pitched voice or most feminine voice. So the women in the office were shocked about me showing up for work, but they were great, and they gave me an opportunity there, and put me in a van with another guy, went out, did my orientation, and the first kind of day on the job, I got all these compliments back from being on my own. Oh, I got great customer service from your new employee. And I didn't meet the boss until 5 days later, and his jaw just hit the floor when he met me in person. The women in the office didn't tell him. They wanted to see the shock on his face after they're like, yeah, the new employee's awesome, all these compliments. And it was really funny, but it was one of those experiences that really kind of struck me. If I couldn't get a job in person, but I could get a job over the phone, what must it be like for people that are, trying to apply for these jobs in person, and they're just getting turned down around every corner. And it really, it's so strikingly bizarre because I think that what we bring to the table as women in trades is the ability to create that diversity in the workforce and bring a different perspective. And I think that there's real value in that. But I think Marika's waving me off here. So.
Thank you, Andrea. That was a good story. It was pretty funny too. But yeah, I imagine there are quite a few young women who struggle with finding employment. I know when I was in my background's heavy duty, I went through that same process. So I can imagine some women today are still struggling with that. I'll turn it over to Anna. Anna, it's...
Hi, my name's Anna Hargraves. I am a Red Seal carpenter. I now work as a carpentry instructor and job coach with women in trades at both Camosun and BIU. So super awesome. I'm an import. I didn't grow up on the island. I got my ticket in Manitoba. So people ask me, how did you get into carpentry? I don't really have an answer for that. It was kind of one of those, like, I just woke up one day and had this idea in my head. I have no clue where it came from. I don't know if I had a dream or saw it on a billboard or what, but I woke up one day and was like, I'm going to be a carpenter. So I got myself on a wait list, and a year later, I started a foundation program, which in Manitoba at the time was 10 months. So I did 10 months in my foundation program, and at the end of it, I was like, what now? So I had, become pretty close with my class, and I talked to my instructor and, said, where should I go to get good experience? And he gave me the contact information for a woman who had a company an hour east of Winnipeg in West Hawk Lake, Falcon Lake area. And she was actually the first female in Manitoba to get her ticket. So I called her. She wasn't hiring at the moment, but she passed me on to another guy who she knew in the small community, and he hired me over the phone, which was super awesome. But I didn't have a license. So I got my driver's license the Friday before the Monday that I started a new job for $4 an hour, less than I was making, in a place where I had no friends or family. So if you want a suggestion of what not to do, it's that. It was very stressful. It turned out being okay. But to add insult to injury, the little cabin that was lined up for me had no running water. So it was big life changes all at once. So when I first got there, I was kind of like, whoa, what did I get myself into? It turned out to be probably the best decision that I ever made, but it was definitely a scary start. So over the course of my career, I was pretty fortunate. Basically, West Hawk Lake, Falcon Lake area is a provincial park. So I got to work on kind of two extremes: cabins that were like multi-million-dollar places for people that it was a second or third home for them. And then like these shacks that were made by grandpappy's grandpappy. And you were kind of coming in and going like, whoa, how do we make this not fall down? So super, super diverse experience. There was a lot of timber framing out there, which I love. We did a lot of tongue and groove pine. We used to make all of our own baseboards and casings and window build outs, which I super loved. Framing, the classic cabin country thing is always the vaulted ceiling. So I got over my fear of heights pretty quickly because I had to. We did decks, docks, boathouses. Docks are really fun because usually at some point during the day, somebody drops something into the lake and you get to laugh when they have to jump in and get their stuff back. But yeah, it was great. It was quite rural, quite remote, lots of boat access only jobs. Super nice to kind of have the feeling like you're almost going camping when you go to work, but getting paid for it. So that was, and it definitely, because there was not easy accessibility to like a lumberyard or, a crane to lift your trusses or whatever, we got to do a lot of problem solving, which I was very thankful for. So diverse, but that being said, when you're absolutely starting out and have no clue what you're doing, and I had no background in carpentry, nor anyone in my family was a tradesperson, it was, the first couple years were hard because when you're lowest rung on the ladder, you get thrown wherever they need somebody and you're never doing the same thing twice. So it took me a super long time to actually kind of be able to put the pieces together and know what the heck I was doing. The first 2 years were very difficult. I had a lot of, like you say, Andrea, self-doubt. I was like, can I do this? Did I just make the biggest mistake of my life? Also, when I started out, I was working for a company where the people I was working with weren't as willing to take me under their wing and show me how to do stuff. It was a lot more quick, let's make money. This is how you do it that way. Instead of, for me, I have to really understand why I'm doing something in the way that I'm doing it so that I can like understand the big picture, right? So tough at the start, but I was super fortunate. When I moved on, I worked for a few other companies during my apprenticeship. And then once I got my ticket and then eventually started my own company. But I had some really, really, really great mentors. I worked for someone that we all called the sensei. I worked for someone called the professor. I worked for, I guess I should say with, a guy who had 20 years of cabinetry experience under his belt. So just an excellent finishing carpenter. So it was really nice to have people that were super willing to take me under their wing and kind of show me the ropes and teach me, and treated me with a lot of respect. So I was very fortunate in that regard. My biggest suggestion to people starting out is take the time to find a place that you can work where you're going to have someone that's willing to answer your questions. I know at the start it can be really hard because, you know, you kind of have to take what you can get just to have something on your resume in your field, but shop around and find a good fit so that you do have mentors that are willing to teach you, because it takes a lot of the self-doubt away. And if, you know, I'd love to alleviate that for everybody because it's horrible. But yeah, anyway, kind of moving on, after carpentry, I ended up moving to the island, and I worked out here for a bit, but I was fortunate enough to get on with Vancouver Island University. I got to do work as tool crib for a while, and then I got on with Camosun. And so now my role, I don't do as much building, but I get to really work with other people and help them, watch them grow. So it's nice to be a part of, you know, like the excitement of getting your first job. I sort of get to feel that through other people now all the time. But I'm getting the warning, so sorry.
Thanks, Anna. That was a good story. I like the dock, diving to get your tools. It's good. Mick, I'm going to give the floor to you.
Hi, I'm Mick Smith. I'm the owner of Ocean View Mechanical. I started my apprenticeship back in 1986. Australia system, I'm an Australian first off. We do our apprenticeships a little different. We start very young. So I finished grade 10 on a Friday and started my apprenticeship on the Monday. And I was 15 and had really no idea what I was doing. But I'd always worked with my dad and had somewhat hand skills. Australia's school system, I think, is a much better school system in the fact that when we go to high school, we choose whether we want to go into the trades or go into academics. So during those first 3 years of high school, you do welding, carpentry, concrete making, forming, bit of plumbing, electrical. So you can have some base skills when you leave high school. And I think that's probably where Canada is catching up a little bit, but still behind, where all we want to do in Canada is seem to push people into university, which is changing for the better. So I did my apprenticeship, really didn't enjoy it. I had a journeyman for 4 years who was very, very, very tough on me. Looking back, it was all for the better because I'm probably that guy now. But he had a standard and he never moved from that standard. Then once I finished my apprenticeship, I'd really had enough. I needed a break from plumbing. I went to the mines. And then very quickly, because I had the skills as a plumber, we were in a big processing plant. As I very quickly moved up to being a shift foreman, way too young to do it, but had the skills. So having a trade to me is not just a one-dimensional job. You can go other places and use that trade. And that's what I've always loved about being a plumber. Fast forward 10 years, I met my ex-wife in the UK, who was Canadian. I decided to move over here on a whim. I really didn't think about it too much. And when I got here, I realized how different Canada's plumbing system is. So I went back to BCIT, basically did the bridging course. Took me 3 goes to get through because we are strictly metric in Australia. So using inches was like learning a different language. It honestly was. But then fast forward again, another 10 years, I ended up divorced, moved over to Victoria to be with my now current wife. And I worked for a big Vancouver company when I come over here, and you're just a number. I mean, you can get into companies where you are just a number. And I said to myself, if I was ever a business owner one day, I'd never want anyone to feel like just a number, that they're not part of something bigger. So fast forward another 5 years with that company, I got a call from a gentleman and he said, "Do you want to buy my business over the next 5 years?" So fast forward 3 more years, I basically took over because he was basically on his way out. And we went into the condominium business. He was strictly a very commercial orientated plumber, hospital work, tenant improvements. I had a background in condominiums, so I pushed to go into that. We did it. We did our first one. We did okay on it, but I had a foreman, Scott, who had worked with me at other companies, and I always seen the greatness in Scott. And then when we went into this condominium, the first person we just called for an apprentice, and we got Emily. And some of you will know Emily and some of you won't. And Emily is an incredibly intelligent young girl who was going through university to basically be a doctor, and decided to become a plumber. And the only two things I can see that relate to it is they both begin with P. So Emily has transformed the company. Even as a first year, she's now a third year. Emily is now our measuring specialist. So Emily has gone from being a first year apprentice, a second year apprentice, third year apprentice. And then I knew if I didn't do something to retain her, someone else would take her. She's that good. So Emily does all our CAD programming. So all of our deck layout now is done on CAD. And Emily has really pioneered that system. So without Emily, I can honestly say I don't think we'd be at the 70 people we are today. Now, once Emily come in, it kind of changed the men's view of how good women can be. So then every foreman wants an Emily, and it's escalated from there. So we now run 10% women in the trades, which is higher than most people. Ironically, this morning I have a committee set up that is women in the workplace, and that is the women in the office and the women in the field come together once every 3 months, and they just talk about what issues they're having outside as a group, and then they go away with my office manager who spearheads that committee, and then they talk individually, because there's things you don't want to talk about in a group that you want to talk about individually. And it solves a lot of problems before they become bigger problems. And it gives me a chance to just sit with the ladies and talk with them one-on-one, because I don't really leave the office that much. So today, you know, the ladies that work with us really love the culture that Ocean View is. So they're worried we're slowing down a little bit. They're seeing layoffs. None of their names are on the list. And that says something to me, is that out of the six apprentices we have, when we go through the list of all the people, when we rank them, none of those girls are on the list. And the biggest reason is just their commitment. They turn up to work, and they're extremely organized and loyal. And that's what all my foremen will say about the females apprentices that they have, that they just exceed the male ability just through what they bring to the table. And if you don't take the time to recognize that as an owner, you will lose out. And I've told people, I'm like, our strength is some of the women we have. They keep things organized, and all in all, I just find them better. And that's sort of been my vision with women. As I said to the guys, we need to be running 10% to start with. And we have one lady, Tanya, who's come to Scott, my senior foreman, and said, I want to be a foreman. And Scott said, then earn it. Like she will make it to a foreman, and we can tell, right? Because she has that personality to do it, and the skill set. So I don't think there's anything that women can't do. It's really the company's environment, and it starts from the top, and it starts from me pushing it through. And when the guys didn't like it at the start, I stuck with it. And then, you know, you do have some guys who put their backs up, but you know what? They're the guys now that say, where I go, my female apprentice comes with me. So you see it come full circle if you just give it a chance. Now, not every company is willing to do that, but to me, it's been a profitable venture. We've lost one along the way who just wasn't happy. I'm still shocked about that, and it kind of hurts a little bit because I don't know what we did wrong. I'm still working out what we did wrong. I don't think we did anything wrong. I just don't think it was the right fit. But all in all, it is exactly what we said, though, is finding a company that supports the women in the workplace, because it is a male-dominated environment, but it doesn't need to be like it was. And that's what I've said to my guys. My guys are so protective over the girls, it's unbelievable. And all I say to them is just treat them like you treat your mum, your daughter, or your own wife. And if you treat them like that, you'll never have a problem. Have we had some problems? Yeah, we've had some problems where we've had to speak to not so much my guys, there's other trades on site, right? So that's something that, you know, I'll get a call. I will ask, do I need to come down and talk and have a conversation? Most of the time it's handled on site. There's been one incident where I had to go to site, and by the time I got there, the guy had apologized and it was all smoothed over. So there's got to be that support network for the women in the workplace. Now, this morning we had our Women in the Workplace Committee talk, and one of my new journeymen, who's on my residential sector, who I don't really know, he said, "Why are these women getting special treatment?" And he's coming in for a chat tomorrow because he needs to learn that he doesn't run the boat, that I run the boat, and if he doesn't like it, I will explain to him why he needs to accept it. So it's exactly what we're saying, is it's not, being a woman in the workplace, it should be, no matter where it is, equal. But it's not always that way, but it's up to management to make it that way. It's not always an easy route to go down. So some owners just say, I can't spend that extra time, but they're missing out. And I will tell people they're missing out on valuable employees. And
that's good to hear, Mick, that you guys have a really balanced team.
Yeah. You've got to be the leader in it, right? Like you've got to say it's not acceptable, and you don't have to come down with a hammer, because men are still learning to be around women. So you also have to learn that, or not learn, but understand that some of these men have never worked with women. And that is something that I'll say to some of these guys. I'm like, you will have to learn to work with women in my workplace. And they're like, what? And I'm like, we run 10% women. So it is a learning experience for everybody. And that's what I say. And the things are going to go wrong, but you also have to teach your men the right behavior, and also have to teach the women the right behavior. And I've had that talk with the girls in the committee, and I just say, keep it professional. And that's what I say to my men, keep it professional. Talk about hockey, football, work. That's what you talk about. Because you wouldn't talk about that with your mum, your grandma, or your daughter. And if you follow those rules, I never have a problem. I don't have a written policy on it. I just talk to people like I talk to you people now. But all in all,
that's good advice.
Attitude.
Thank you. That's good advice, Mick. Thank you. I just have to move on to Bethany. Bethany, I will give you the floor.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes? Okay, awesome. Hi, so I'm Bethany. I am 25. I just got my Red Seal back in January, so I'm a fully fledged Red Seal automotive technician. And my story is a little bit different. I've actually been so fortunate. I went through the 10-month program back in almost 5 years ago now. I don't even know what year it is, so 2015. And it was pretty cool. So I had to go for my work experience, and I ended up at Budget Brake and Muffler here on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo. And after the 3 weeks, my boss brought me into the office, and he was like, I think you have what it takes. We really have enjoyed working with you. We want to hire you on. So I have been with him for 4.5 years now. And it's been awesome. I love everyone that I work with. I've been so fortunate. The guy that I was, I guess he was training me. He was probably one of the best technicians I have ever met. I learned so many cool tips and tricks, and it was awesome. I love working on cars, and it kind of, I don't know, I'm so nervous. Sorry, guys. This is my cat being,
Take your time.
But I have a Subaru that is my absolute passion, and my boss allows me to use the shop whenever I want, and I have learned so much. I have seen everyone else's stories were so nicely put together. I am so flustered.
So you work on your vehicle?
Yeah. Oh, Ian, sorry, he's knocking over my computer screen too. Yeah, so I work on my own vehicle and it's been awesome. If I hadn't gotten into the trade, I would not have been able to go as far as I have with it. And I'm so sorry. And yeah, everybody that I work with has just been so supportive and I haven't had any issues really. I was definitely a little bit nervous when I first started going into the trade. I was like, what if I can't do this? I'm definitely not as strong as most of the guys out there. So I've definitely had to get creative. I'll walk into the shop sometimes and I'll be doing the weirdest things. I'll have like a huge bar to try and break something free. I've lowered the hoist basically to the ground so I can put my feet against the hoist to break something free as well. They're like, I have never seen a technician stand on the hoist to do that. And I'm like, it's fine. But yeah, it's been really good. My boss has 6 kids and they're all girls, so he's super understanding when I get a little bit stressed out or I've got some other stuff going on. And everyone at my work is basically just one big happy family, and I'm just so fortunate to be there. And I'm gonna stop rambling now. So thank you for inviting me to this. I'm sorry, I'm a disorganized mess. I get
It's
very
good.
nervous talking in front of people.
It's nice that you're able to share your experience, and that was the whole point, is that you can share your story about your journey into the trade, right? And so you've been successful and you have a good team around you, and that's important to share because we want young women in the trades to know that that is out there. There are very good teams, the way Mick described it and the way you're describing your employment, your employer, and the environment seems to be positive for you. So that's good. We're glad that you're able to share that. Okay, and I will move it on and give the floor to Rebecca.
Hey everyone. I think maybe I'm unmuted. I'm good. Nice. Good. So just to encourage a few people, including Bethany. Something that I learned a while ago was I used to despise speaking in front of people. And when I started teaching, it really showed up, where like my forehead would start sweating, but people couldn't really notice that because I have bangs. But then my upper lip would start sweating. And then the more I would start thinking about like, oh my goodness, my upper lip is sweating, like, can they see it? It would get worse, right? And then it just was a never ending fun game. So that being said, something that always really encouraged me as I began to get better, pushing myself, talking more, getting into situations that pushed me out of my comfort zone, was just knowing that some of the most influential public speakers and influential leaders in history were terrible at public speaking, right? Like Winston Churchill, renowned for it. So that's something that always kind of carried me. But just turning into my experiences, who I am, where I'm from. I am a welder by trade. I've been in the industry for 16, going on 17 years soon. For me, what got me into it was a series of natural, unexpected events. I was heavily into snowboarding. Thought I could make something with my life of becoming a professional snowboarder, and I made a lot of injuries. So something I definitely achieved. Had a few too many concussions. Even was told that I'd probably get the benefit, Andrea, of wearing a rugby helmet one day if I kept it up all my life. So like through daily events, which I was kind of like, I think I might like to be able to at least date someone someday. So maybe not a bad idea to consider doing something else. I had done a season in Austria and was not very good with money. So I'd racked up a bunch of debt, including on credit cards. And I wasn't ready to go for school for anything academic. I was not very good at academics in high school. Partly had a lot going on in life, wasn't very good at applying myself at the time. So it was pretty neat once I was given the idea of considering a trade possibly. It was by my mom. So because my mom suggested, I was adamant that's not happening. I'm already a tomboy too. Definitely not going to entertain that. But it stuck in my head. So I signed up for an info session at Camosun. I went to school at Camosun in Victoria for all of my training. and it sucked me in, which was hilarious because it got me. I didn't see that coming. And so I signed up. There was a 2-year wait list. And I am the type of person, I'm quite ambitious. Didn't realize that for a number of years. And so once I signed up, I was kind of determined. I like planted the seed. So I started calling every 2 weeks and kept bugging the registrar lady to the point where I think she just got sick of me. And so a spot opened up randomly the day before a class started, and she called me and she was like, "Do you want it?" "Yes, please." So I showed up, green as anything, had no idea I even had to read a tape measure, was totally in over my head. Every day for the first month, came home crying. It was not tough. Something just like to share for me too is that I grew up with all guys. Like I only had brothers. All the sports that I was into were all guys. Snowboarding, all guys. It was very rare to have females in a lot of those atmospheres. So for me, once I got into trades, it was normal. It wasn't even actually on my radar until like a number of years into my career that there was something different. So my experience is actually quite different than most, where it's actually been once I started to become highly skilled and had a lot of different qualifications under my belt that I started realizing things weren't always quite as easy as they could be, maybe sometimes, depending on gender. And I got really good quickly at putting just an initial on my resume. So then that way I could bypass the trick, Andrea, of having someone not have to know right away, right? And it was fascinating because that just worked. And once I got my first job out of school, I pounded the pavement for 2 weeks and just handed resumes out everywhere. I had some really funny stories. Like I walked into one shop here in Victoria, I won't mention the name, but I thought it would be really funny. Like I like humor, especially if I'm nervous. So I thought it would be really funny to give the guys behind the desk my resume and say, "Oh, hey, you need a secretary. Here's my resume." Just joking. "Do you need work for any welders?" And they actually didn't answer me, put my resume in the garbage in front of me. And I just stood there like, oh, I guess this wasn't very funny, right? Like just a little embarrassed. So blast ahead into my first job was fantastic. I had a fellow who was from Oklahoma originally. He was an ex-Navy guy, very, very tough guy, but huge heart. So he taught me quickly to toughen up, to be okay with standing up for myself, to know my strengths. And the way that I like to say it lately is know my strengths and grow my weaknesses. Because also some of my greatest strengths are also my weaknesses as well, especially if I'm not aware of them. From there, I took risks. So I, once again, still hadn't really worked my way out of debt. I'd really racked it up pretty high. So once I got my red seal, I actually went up to Fort McMurray and drove up there by myself in the middle of a snowstorm. Didn't realize that I was entering into a snowstorm after staying in Edmonton and failing my first 2 major weld tests, which could have taken me out. I'm a perfectionist. Most good welders, just say that humbly though, but most good welders are perfectionists. And that tends to be also our weaknesses, because then we're our own worst critics. Nobody else will ever pick apart our work or ourselves as much as we will. And so that's something I really have to work on consistently, is being grateful that I'm self-aware, but also I'm not a label person, but I'm going to use this label. Also recognizing that most people, males included, suffer from the term imposter syndrome. And I'm starting to realize as I start developing in my career, and I'm in a management role now, that actually I don't think ever leaves, no matter how old we get, if we're someone that is a perfectionist kind of mindset, right? So having safe people around me too, that I know are my safe people. That was when I was up in Fort Mac, was a huge thing for me, is that I'd call people up and be like, I am so sick of being in camp. Like, I don't want to leave my room right now because I don't know who's outside there in the hallway. And just, I've seen them all day at work too, working sometimes 18 hours a day. Like, I just need some perspective here. Can we just talk about something funny, something good, and just learning to grow in that. From Fort Mac, I went into pressure work. So talk about welding tests. They never ended in that line of work. I loved it and hated it at the same time. I am someone that is very inclined to challenge myself. So I actually stepped out of that line of work because it was becoming quite stressful. I needed to just take a bit of a breather and kind of regroup and decide what I actually wanted for my life and what type of work I wanted. If I wanted to work my life away, or if I wanted to do the opposite, right? Or how they say it, work to live. So I stepped into teaching, which was fantastic. I still miss it, if not on the daily, on the weekly. So I taught for 5 years at Thompson Rivers University and have incredible stories about never giving up on people. I think would be my biggest takeaway from that, was that sometimes I think like, this person is just, they can't be a welder. Like, not everybody can be. And this person just doesn't have it. And then they'd screw me over because they'd prove me wrong. And it would be like a light switch day where just all of a sudden, like 4 months into the course, they got it. And I'd be like, oh man, I'm so happy you did, but now we've got a long road to go, right? So it really taught me to just never give up on people and always expect the best, because you never know, they might surprise you. And I was going to tie that into Mick, something that you were saying, which if I tried to write it down, but I might have missed it. But basically, like if we set the atmosphere we want to have around us, normally people will rise to meet it. And so for me, like, I try not to be too, it's not all about me. That was something one of my first foremans taught me too, is often I get in my head and I think things going on around me could be about me, like what's going on. It's not all about me. Why would I be so self-absorbed to think it might be? So that was something helpful for size. I'm a very small person. So just something for tying into, I think it might be you, Bethany, to tie into that. And I might not look small right now, but for a welder, I'm very petite. And you can always make yourself bigger. Like, you can step on a ladder, you can grab a snipe, right? You can always make yourself bigger, but it's quite difficult to make yourself smaller. So it's definitely an asset for trades. And then don't take it personally was the thing, Mick, that I was going to just tap in with you. Don't take it personally. Teach it a new way by influencing people. So don't ever underestimate your influence as well. It's something that I think is a big takeaway. And enjoy it. It's a fun journey. So all the people that are on this Zoom tonight are probably on here because they may not have had people that were willing to support them, or just were even around, right, to support them. So figure out who might be a mentor for you, and don't be scared to ask. Just ask, right?
Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Lindsay.
That's awesome, Rebecca. Really appreciate it. Well, I really want to thank all of our speakers here this evening. This has been really awesome. We're opening the floor right now for questions. So if there are questions, if you have them, if you can put them in the chat, that would be the best way. And if there's someone in particular you'd like to direct it to, I do have some questions that have come in already. Yeah, I can start putting those out there. And but yeah, anyone who's participating here this evening, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Do any of you want to talk about any resources that made a difference for you in your career?
Just from my experience, there have been a lot of changes, which thankfully for me, because I've been going in different industries, right? Like, my experience in the 16 years has been very broad. I've moved around a lot because I like challenge. It's been really encouraging for me to see how much has changed in just 16 years. And a big part of it even is just legitimately groups like this. Like, this would have been unheard of. Zoom would have been unheard of, mind you, back then too. But at the same time, right, it really was and would be. It's really neat to see even how women in trades programs have changed and evolved as well, because those weren't a thing then either. And so there's just so many different avenues, support systems, resources, and then also groups of women that are genuinely joining together as allies and supports and resources. So it's happening naturally as well.
I think we have a question from Amanda. So Amanda's asking, how do you overcome being a female foreman with men who don't respond to female leadership? Anna or Andrea or somebody who's maybe dealt with this?
For me, I guess it's always been a bit different. I've always kind of tried to develop a mentorship or be there for everyone system when I'm in charge. So if this means, me going the extra mile in the workplace to kind of prove that we're working together as one big team, or if you don't fit that team dynamic, it's going to be bye-bye. I kind of take a page from Mick's book in that. It's me. If I'm in charge, I'm in charge. And if you're not going to respect me, we're going to talk about it and we're going to figure out why. I want to know what's eating at you that you're not respecting me. And if you're not going to fit in as part of that team and we can't work together, we can't develop that team relationship, then something's got to shift. And I think it's about a direct line of communication and what your expectations are, and try to develop that team dynamic within your crew. I know that there are men out there that they will not. It's my way or the highway. They don't want to engage with that idea of female leadership. I've had a student that didn't want to engage with me as a female instructor in the class. But you know what? I've attacked it from every single angle, and I was able to change that student's perspective. I was like, what do you need to succeed here? Because my job as a professional is to make you succeed. So what do we have to do to make you succeed? Because I don't care if you like me or not, but you got to work with me and work for me and respect me. And that's kind of where I've always come from on that. And I'm super direct. And, in my experience, most men like direct. This is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. Well, let's get it done. This is the job.
Thank you for that.
There's a question about, someone wants to know about what work is like specifically in the welding industry. And so for that, just because we're already beyond time here, I did write this in the chat, but I do want you all to know that as part of my job as the outreach coordinator for the Center for Women in the Trades, one of the things I do is take calls and emails and messages from folks who are just like, hi, I'm beginning in this trade, or I'm in this trade, but I'm thinking of this other trade, or I'm thinking of starting in a trade, and I want to know about, and they tell me what trades they want to know about, and then I do a call out among our huge network of tradeswomen around the province and find out, okay, so you're trying to decide between electrical and drafting. Okay, well, I know a woman up north who's a drafter and she would love to speak with you, as well as, there's a woman over here who's doing electrical, and also I'm an electrician and can tell you things about my own career. That's something I can do for you. So for those of you who want to know, like, what does a day in the life of a welder look like, please get in touch and I can connect you with that. So that's something we can do beyond this session. There's another question here I do want to answer, and it's coming from Margaret asking about incentives for employers who will hire women from different programs. So specifically, the one that I know of that is successful is the WATS program, which is actually put together by the IBEW union. That's the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And they have their own training program that's 2 weeks, basics of electrical, and then they sponsor your positions working for a union employer for a certain amount of time. I can't remember the length. But so that actually is running right now. It's very successful. If you look up WATT, W-A-T-T, you can find information about that. In general, though, because I've asked the same question, I'm like, okay, so how do we get more women in trades? Studies have shown that incentives don't work. Incentives in terms of subsidizing women's wages or providing sorts of tax breaks and stuff like that, they are not successful in the long term. What happens is that in general, employers tend to get those women on just for the time period that their wages are subsidized, and as soon as they aren't, they get rid of them again. So there are obviously outliers there where it has been a successful sort of program, and like I said, the union's having a great time with it in terms of what they're currently doing. So that's the IBEW WATS program. But in general, that's actually not the direction we're trying to go in terms of normalizing women in trades. That's actually what we're trying to move forward with, is this whole concept of like, there's a skilled trade shortage. We have the ability to address it. We have the women here and we have the skills. So let's just move forward and make sure that we can all do this together. We're gonna have to wrap this up. Those of you who have more questions, both Marika and I are available, and we'd love to answer your questions and also put you in contact with anyone else here this evening who wants to hear, who you want to talk to. So please.
Yeah, you can just reach out to us by email. I do have some of the information here. We can answer some of the questions ourselves, and then we can go back and forth if you guys need some more information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Thank you, everybody.
And
Have
thank
a
you
good
especially to our speakers. You guys.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Bye. Have a good evening.
You too.